Well, here we are. The last essay in the Life is Strange remake essay collection, and we're ending on the best note possible, true colors. I mean, if you've read the other 3 remake essays, then you already know a lot about my thoughts on this game, but if you've only read the original, then you're missing out, because I'm about to unleash a hellstorm upon you. This game is all about Alex Chen, who is fresh out of the foster care system, and has finally made contact with her long-lost older brother Gabe. She's on her way to live with him in Haven Springs, Colorado, and the story goes from there. Anyhow, let's get to the point and discuss what we're going to cover today. As per usual, we're going to talk about the story, the characters, the music, why this is objectively the best game in the series so far, and some extra fun things like finding home, the tonal differences between the games as explained through music genres, and a little segment on the locations of the Life is Strange games. Without further ado, let this journey of self-discovery and mystery in the mountains begin. The game starts and Alex is talking to her therapist about her upcoming plans. Our stupid bastard therapist questions if we're actually mentally sound enough to leave the group home and live with our brother out in Colorado. And we sure are. We then cut to Alex getting off a bus, having left Oregon far behind, and here we are, Haven Springs, a whole new life free from the foster care system, and everything is open to us. All that's left to do is cross the bridge, enter town, and reunite with Gabe, who we haven't seen in a little more than a decade. We stand on the bridge for a little bit until Gabe arrives to pick us up. He jogs up, gives you a quick hug, and pulls back when you don't respond. Gabe asks, quote, "What's the protocol for reuniting with your long-lost sister after 8 years? And you get to make your first choice of the game. What do? Give him a hug like a normal person, or a handshake like you're Patricia Bateman, and he's just presented you with a business card that has a subtle off-white coloring, a tasteful thickness, and oh my god, it even has a watermark." Anyways, where was I? Oh yeah, the siblings make their way into town. Alex and Gabe meet some of our eclectic small-town weirdos, like Eleanor, the flower shop owner, and her granddaughter Riley, who runs the shop. You know, this because Gabe has to make a stop there for some apology flowers, because this is routine, I guess. Anyhows, stop by the shop, meet Riley, help Gabe pick out the right flowers, learn that Mac's going around pissed off to hell and back, and then get sent off to walk around as Gabe makes a delivery to his girlfriend Charlotte. You meet Gabe's, not actually, but like essentially, stepson Ethan, and learn of his plans to go up into the mountains to explore the mines and all that good shit. You know how it is. Anyways, I told him to be careful going up there, be safe and whatnot, and then went about my day, heading to the record store I saw across the street. So head on over and in, searching for something good to gift Gabe. In the store, Alex looks around and notices that this record store is also a radio station, and that sure is pretty cool, so let's check it out. At the station part of the store, we see and hear this chick playing some music, and she's looking to cue up the next song. She sees you and puts 2 vinyls up to the glass for you to pick from. Pick fast, Choconuts! You can pick Unicorn Sandwich or The Black Parade. Holy shit, I can't believe they had the budget to play Welcome to the Black Parade. Oh wait, I'm illiterate. That says The Zombie Parade. Well, either way, pick a song and Steph will play it after calling you some chick. And then we'll carry on looking through the store, trying to find something good for Gabe. As she looks through the store, she runs into a very special character. It's time to meet my boy, my dearly beloved Ryan. Ryan is unquestionably the best boy in the series, and I cannot understate how good of a character he is. It's genuinely criminal that most people pick Steph over him, because man, he's so much fun. Anyways, setting the swooning aside for a little bit, Ryan here is a state park ranger here in the blessed state of Colorado. He's a goofy little guy, and he's the son of the local bartender, but more than that, he's an absolute dweeb, but we'll get to that. Ryan tells us that the store is in fact closed, despite the fact that they're very clearly open. Alex questions this, and Ryan puts 2 and 2 together and realizes that this lady is in fact his best friend's sister, so he drops it. Alex's perception stat is high enough that she succeeds the passive check and notices Ryan's holding a CD of his own. She questions him on this, and he admits that he's holding a CD of, you guessed it, bird calls, and not for his job, just for fun. My boy loves identifying birds, and God bless him for it. Anyhows, Alex makes fun of him. he takes it all in stride. They talk a little bit about Gaben, and then Steph bursts out of the studio on the phone, and boy of boy is she pissed. Alex's powers go into maximum overdrive, and Ryan, being an empath, God, I can't believe I just made that joke, senses her distress and convinces Steph to go outside and that he'll cover the station for her so she can go outside and work this out. Alex is able to calm down and doesn't have a breakdown, so all is fine. The two talk a little more, and Alex says she was here to get a gift for Gabe, and since Ryan's his best friend, he knows that Gabe just put something on the hold list. Problem is, he doesn't know where the wait list is, so it's time to put our visual calculus skills to the test and work out where that list is. After some amazing powers of observation, you discover that the list is underneath the shop cat, who is real aggressive and full of sound and fury, all of which is to say that you cannot move the cat without getting murdered. Find a toy to encourage the cat to move, and once you know it, the cat goes for it. Examine the list, find the vinyl, pay and panic as Gabe has entered the building. Ryan successfully distracts Gaben, and you can slide that record into your bag without a hitch. Ryan tells his best friend to be careful because Max got that old stick up his ass again, but outside of that, there's some great banter between those two that I can't put all of it here. Anyways, the siblings take their leave and head off towards the bar so Alex can finally have some place to drop her things and stay. Along the way, the siblings encounter Stepboy. Stepboyo tells Gaben that he's gonna go home and study or something and leaves. Alex then is given the choice to narc on the kid, since she knows that he's actually gonna go up into the mines of Moria, and you absolutely should narc on that kid because there's gonna be a mining blast tonight. So yeah, like, since you probably don't want the kid to die because you said nothing, you should tell Gaben about that. You do, he says, "Hey, cool man, I'm gonna call his mom and tell her about that and we'll be on our way, okay?" And we're back on track. On the way to his apartment, the siblings run into Jed, Gabe's boss at the local bar and the father of Ryan. They all chat, make jokes. Jed warns Gabe about Mac having that old stick up his ass again, and we're off. Who is Mac and why does he have so many sticks and bugs up his ass? Who knows, man. For now, though, we head up to Gaben's apartment and it's time to share some gifts. But not before Gaben tells you that since he spends most of his time living at Charlotte's, the apartment is yours. Yippee! Give Gabe the record and he's all like, "Oh no, I was gonna get this for you." They laugh, throw on the record, and do the DANCE 1 2 3 4 5. Glad all 2 people in my audience got that joke. Leave a comment if you understood that joke, please. I'm interested to know what percentage of people know that reference. Anyways, there's a knock at the door, and who could it be now? Take a wild guess. I think you already know who it could be, judging by the sounds of 1,000 sticks dragging across the ground. It's Mac, and boy oh boy is he pissed. He's going apeshit because he thinks Gabe has been sleeping with Riley, so he beats the shit out of him, and Alex's powers are going into overdrive. See, Alex has some really interesting little powers that allow her to see and feel other people's emotions on a whole nother level, like reading people's thoughts. Or, in other words, you can see their true colors. I'm not clever at all. Anyhows, Alex goes apeshit and, matching Mac's rage, beats the shit out of him to the point that his face looks like a scraped knee by the time Gabe peels you off of him. You end up hitting Gabe real hard in the face on accident, Mac calls you a psycho bitch or whatever and leaves. Gaben goes downstairs and you're left alone to wash the blood off your hands, contemplate what you just did, and unpack. As you do, take a moment to journal, put your copy of the family photo next to Gaben's, put your stuffed animal on the bed, and then slide your bag under the bed, only to hit something neat. What is it? A guitar, just for you. Hey Alex, are you taking requests? Can you play something good like Where the Streets Have No Name by U2? What's this? You only know basic songs? Oh well, that's okay. How about Take Me Home, Country Roads by John Denver? No? Okay, do I dare ask if you know how to play Wonderwall? Oh, that's a relief, you're not gonna play Wonderwall. Then what are you gonna play?
When you were here before...
Oh, god damn it! I want to run. I want to hide. I want to tear down the walls that hold me inside this prison that keeps making references to Creep by Radiohead. Jokes aside, I actually really do love this cover, and this moment is actually really good, even if the song choice is a bit on the nose. Calm down, finish the song, and head downstairs to find Gaben. Down in the bar, see Ryan and Gabe walk out to find some actual medical supplies for fixing up the faces of both Gabe and Mac. While they're out, Jed is short a bartender, and since Gabe put in a good word for you, it's time to prove your stuff. Here's our chance to meet some of the other eccentric weirdos that make this place feel like a real lived-in place. Like Ducky! He's a weird old guy with a lot of stories to tell and a lot of time to tell them. And he's here with recent mountain transplant Diane, who works for Typhon, the local mining company that's got a mining blast planned tonight, as I'm sure you've seen plastered on posters all around town. Anyways, this doesn't matter yet, so take their orders, remember them well, and report back to Jed to get the order started for them. Clean some tables, talk to Steph if you're so inclined, and realize that Steph isn't just a random character invented for this game. Oh no, she's a returning character. If you remember back to one of the many times I've talked about before the storm, you'll recognize her as the inconsequential lesbian in that game. This time around though, she's actually very consequential, but again, not important at the moment. What is though, is that you need to finish the job and then go talk to Mac. Mac is pleading with you to lie to Riley because if you don't, their relationship is full-on dunzo. Now, here's the thing. You have no real reason to lie for Mac, as all he's ever done is harm you, and as you start to rip into him, Riley shows up. This means you don't have to rip into Mac because you're in control here. Do you appease Mac and let this shit-ass relationship stay the course? Or do you do the thing I choose to do and tell her the truth? Tell her the truth, watch Riley dump Mac's ass harder than a Mac truck hits, and oh hey, Ryan and Gaben are back. Yippee! Gabe tells you that he wants to have a little chat up on the rooftop patio. Up on the rooftop, Gaben's sitting down facing the lake. You join him, he pulls a beer out from under the chair and hands it to you without a word, and more impressively, without looking. There's a joke about whether or not he rehearsed that move. He didn't. And the two talk about what the hell happened earlier. You have two options. Either explain your emotional clairvoyance, or talk about the trauma of the foster care system. I always just come clean about my wacky superpowers, and where Alex sees a curse or something that makes her a freak, Gabe sees a superpower. It's a really sweet moment where Alex starts to realize that maybe she can use her powers for good. But this moment gets interrupted when Ryan comes up to tell Gaben that Stepboy is currently MIA, and since you told Gabe about his plan, it's time to go up to the mountain. In the mountains, Ryan and Gabe make a sat phone call to try and call off the mining blast because there's a child up there. Even though this wouldn't be their fault legally because the warnings were posted and this clearly is a restricted area, but that's besides the point. They make the call, which makes this their problem. Problem here is that no one knows where the boy is, so you gotta explore this abandoned mining facility. Eventually, through the power of context clues and a comic that the boy had given you earlier, you find the path. Across a fallen tree over a massive ravine is the boy. He's appropriately terrified, and now it's time for Ryan to do his park ranger shit. The problem is, he and Gabe are each too heavy to be able to cross the tree, and thus it's time for Alex to try and talk Ethan out of his fear and back into safety. Ryan's got his ranger supplies, which includes some rope, and using a nearby stump and Gabe, they make a fulcrum to have a support tie in case Alex falls. Cross the tree and realize that the only way to get Ethan over is to see things from his perspective, so you use your powers to witness why he's afraid. He sees the ravine as this big-ass evil monster, and you can use his logic to help him recover. You'll eventually succeed and are able to bring him over and back to safety. Woo! We did it! Right? Well, unfortunately the mining blast goes off anyway, and a big-ass boulder smites Gaben into the ravine. Alex is still tied to Gabe, though, and she starts careening off the cliff too. So Ryan has to act fast and follow his training to save as many people as he can, which unfortunately means cutting the rope and letting his best friend die. And that's the end of episode 1. And this would have been a phenomenal twist if all of the marketing for this game didn't spoil this in the trailers. They always pitch this game around the death of Gaben, and I wish they didn't, because when you're not prepared for it, man, this scene goes crazy. But I digress. We do our usual stats screen, and of course, this is the last time I'll mention it, as per tradition. Several days, maybe even weeks, have gone by at this point. At the Black Lantern, they're hosting a wake for Gaben, reminiscing and sharing all of those good old memories, which is how this episode opens. All is going well until that dickbag Mac decides to open his trap and pick a fight with Ryan, which sends Alex up into the apartment and prematurely ends the wake. So thanks, Mac, you condescending prick. Alex closes the door, only to hear a knock from Steph. let her in and it's time to talk and shit. So in the apartment, Alex and Consequential Lesbian talk about Gabe, Ethan, and everything in that vein, which appears to be going well until Steph notices this object Gaben has kept around, and she gets real sad real fast. Alex then decides to use her powers to try and cheer up Consequential Lesbian through the power of foosball. You're gonna play 3 matches, and I'm gonna keep it real with you, chat. I didn't just sweep, it was 3 consecutive shutouts, which reasonably means that Steph should feel at her absolute lowest right now. Ignoring that, during the game, Steph tries to distract you with some personal questions, with the most notable being, what kind of person are you into? You can ignore the question, answer boys, girls, or both. It doesn't really matter too awful much, but it's nice character building, I suppose. That said, I won the tournament in a queen sweep because reasons. I'm just good at this shit, man. Yeah, but Steph is a bit happier now, as is Alex, and they talk a little more before Steph leaves. And this mostly serves as our intro to Alex deciding it's time to investigate what caused the mining blast to go off despite Gaben calling in. A small amount of time goes by, I clean up the depression pit a bit, head downstairs, talk to Jed, and now we're out in the town trying to hunt down Mac. There's a lot of optional things to do here, like visiting Charlotte to tell her not to take Typhon's money, since she wouldn't be able to sue him if something came to light. Visiting Steph to see that she's organizing a LARP thing for Ethan because he's a depressed sack of shit. Go to the flower shop to help Eleanor deal with her secretive dementia, all that good stuff. Make sure with the dementia thing that you tell Eleanor what the flowers were for Gabe's funeral, because this will matter later. Anyways, go talk to Riley, try and find Mac, and go deal with the shenanigans that ensue with his ordeal. You'll find the rat bastard, realize he's being threatened into silence by Typhon because he was on shift during the whole Child in the Mountains incident, and help him calm down a bit, or you don't have to if you're so inclined. After this shit, you get a text from Ryan in which he seems to be in a fair bit of distress, so head on out to the mountains to try and find him. Ryan's having a pretty big Eric Draven post-death breakdown, in which he's blaming himself for what happened, that old it should have been me kind of thing, you get the drill. Talk him down, get his ass to realize that he saved your life, Gaben would forgive him, it's forever now, so it's time to let go and move on. We jump forward in time and the two are talking about Casa Bonita, because this game sure is set in Colorado. Casa Bonita, my beloved. Anyway, they're having a great time, laughing and all that shit, which means it's the perfect time for Alex to explain her powers to Ryan. You can ask him to feel a strong negative emotion, whether it's through thinking of something that scares him, makes him afraid, or third thing. He obliges you without hesitation, and you successfully parrot back his thought to him. But then something strange happens. He starts to remember a positive memory, and this is the first time Alex has ever seen a positive emotion with her powers. So it's time to experiment with new things. Alex reads Ryan's memory of when he pranked Gaben, and for the first time, ever, Alex starts laughing hysterically about it and proves to Ryan that her powers are real. You explain your power and you can explain it the same way you explained it to Gaben, superhero or freak. Ryan's a smooth operator and is supportive either way you play it, because he's gonna be there by your side through it all if you let him in. You're given 2 choices at the end of it. Either hug the boy or shake his hand, and you know the drill by now, if you've watched the other remake essays in this set anyway. So hug that boy, much to his confusion, but he's into it, so all is well. Later that night, it's time to give Gaben a proper send-off, so let's light some lanterns and end this episode properly. Time flies by, we're at work, and Alex and Ryan just broke the news to Steph about Alex's powers. She's kinda pissed about being the last one to know, but it'll be fine. The gang here has a mission, since we're all in on the takedown Typhon plan, and today's step is to steal Diane's flash drive and get our grubby little hands on them corporate secrets. Ryan and Consequential Lesbian have plans, and Alex isn't the most enthusiastic about them. The Consequential Lesbian's plan is to have her seduce Diane, perhaps sleep with her if she's so inclined to. That's a direct thing from the game, by the way. I did not make that up. I just need to cover my own ass there. And Alex is unimpressed. Alex then turns to Ryan for his plan, and much to her dismay, it's the same plan, but he's the one to distract Diane, and he's not going to try and sleep with her. Alex is distraught by these options, to say the least, but since you can only pick from these two plans, Alex is told to pick whoever she thinks is hotter, and the answer is clear. It's ya boy, Ryan. Steph is in shambles, but Ryan is having the season of a lifetime right now. Like, he just can't stop winning. I know this is the underdog choice stats-wise by like a staggering margin last time I checked, but I do love a good underdog story. Anyways, time to enact the worst laid plans imaginable. Against all odds, the plan goes staggeringly well, which is to say we successfully got the drive in the most awkward way imaginable. Whatever though. The gang heads upstairs to the apartment, laugh their asses off, and then realize that this drive do be encrypted and password protected though, so they're gonna have to try a lot harder to get to those company secrets. And since none of them are techies, they're gonna need to enlist some extra help. Like Riley. You know, I think it's been a little too long since we've had a time jump, so let's skip ahead to Bit to LARP Day. This segment will make up the bulk of the episode, and it's a really fun little thing. We get to explore town, do some battles, cast spells and shit, and it's a lot of fun. Of course, this is more logic and puzzle based, and to have the optimal run, you're gonna have to go out of your way to do some other character things, like telling Ducky he can have a free beer as a treat, and help a jester find his purpose through answering his riddles and shit, dropping by the flower shop to see Riley, unrelated, and all that good stuff. Of course, we have a mission. Acquire the 3 magic objects to get Ethan a big sword and then fight the big final bad, but it's more about how we acquire the magic objects than actually getting them. You can find everything in multiple ways, but I won't spoil all of that here. I will say that when you encounter Steph, she's absolutely fuming over picking Ryan when you needed to do that for that plan. Anyways, you do your mission and end up in the final fight. Everything seems really magical, and it is for a bit, because this final fight literally takes you to this epic fantasy world with actual spells, and it's great. I've never lost this fight, full disclosure, so you win, and Ethan seems to be in a really good mood. That is, until a mining blast goes off in the distance and he loses his mind. Yeah, but who cares about that child? Let's visit Charlotte and see how she's doing. Oh, what's this? She's back in her studio making art. Nice. But, she's definitely not doing too well. In fact, she seems pretty far from it. Like, angry would be an understatement. She's all in on that James O'Barr style rage and self-loathing, lashing out at everyone as a result of Gaben's untimely demise. You try to get a better read on her emotional state, but, this is not the place. And so you're given a choice. Absorb her rage, or just let her stew in it. This is where we remember the lesson of the first game and realize that sometimes the best thing to do is nothing, because we can't help everyone. Anyways, head home for the night, and it's time for the gang to examine the flash drive that Riley cracked for us. Alex is able to stay calm, and we're able to piece together that there was actually a second blast that night, which wasn't actually on the books. So the mystery deepens, and the episode ends. Well, kids, it's time for the mountain prom, or, the spring festival. This traditional festival, where you give your betrothed a rose, has lost its original meaning as a fertility ritual thing, and is mostly just a way to say you love someone. But it's a big local thing, so let's join the festivities, eh? Head on down, examine the locals, help a dude win a jelly bean guessing contest through using your powers, help Ducky overcome his infinite sadness, not so gently nudge a couple into getting together that night. Long story, not relevant to this one. And after all of that, it's time to drop a rose for your beloved. And who's it gonna be? Well, y'all already know who it is. It's Ryan, and it was never even close to a contest. He and Inconsequential Lesbian have been setting up the stage for a local band to perform, and you give him this rose, which instills the fear of God in him, but he's ecstatic underneath all the anxiety. Anyhows, no one has told you who's going to be on stage tonight, and when it's around showtime, they reveal that the band playing tonight is you! Also, to a much lesser degree, Steph is there on the drums. Alex performs Blister in the Sun in a really great cover in the game, and then we're off to the real scene and why this is the best episode in the series. Since I gave Ryan the rose, he told us to meet him on the roof of the Lantern after the show. So head on up and see what he's got planned. He's got a gift, and it's a tree. Alex doesn't know how to respond, and Ryan, my sweet boy Ryan, responds with a line I'm astonished that I predicted when he gestures towards it and says,
It's a tree.
Alex then says she's never been given a tree before, and they talk a little about her future. To say she's never actually thought that far ahead before is a little bit of an understatement. So I guess this really is a night of firsts, huh? They take a moment to actually think about what her life may be like going forward, and I answer truthfully, saying that I'm staying here and getting into the great outdoors, and eventually the moment hits. Ryan's the most nervous boyo in the world, and you've got two options, hug or kiss. And as per tradition, you already knew my next move.
Care about you, Alex. A lot. You're the most amazing person I've ever met. Come on, dummy, kiss her. Kiss her. I really want to kiss you right now.
I know.
I cannot understate how much I love this scene. I mean, it's genuinely perfect in every facet, and I can't reiterate this enough. Anyways, it's a rare moment where Alex experiences genuine joy, and it's so sweet. Nothing ever lasts forever though, because Alex has a meeting con la policía sobre la información que buscabas en la memoria flash. She does take a moment to just contemplate what happened with Ryan, and all in all, it's been a pretty damn good night, even if we had to abandon our usual jeans and jackets for this. The point of the matter is, Alex goes downstairs to meet with Officer Fishcop. His name is a long story, and that's not relevant to our narrative here. And, we're under arrest. We get taken into the station, and we're here because we did technically commit the easier-to-prove crime in this scenario, so it's looking like it might be Jover for us. Our options are limited, but we've got an ace in the hole. If we absorb the fear from Fishcop, he'll no longer fear incurring the wrath of the company, and you'll be able to get him to look at the contents of the flash drive, and you'll be all good to get out of the station and go to bed for the night. We change into a sweatshirt and pants instead of the shirt and skirt combo we were rocking earlier, and Jed wants to talk. Nothing seems out of the ordinary, and you can trust Jed. He's been nothing but kind to us. Gave us a job, a roof over our head for no rent, and has never given you a reason to not trust him. You then tell him about the Typhon shit, and he tells you he knows exactly what you're looking for. Well, with him being a former Typhon helldiver himself. Jed takes you out to this old-ass mining vent shaft because the second blast you discovered was meant to cover up the old mine that collapsed during the 2008 mine collapse that made Jed a hero or something. Alex questions why he knows all of this, and it's irrelevant because he's truly a company man at heart, and he's got a .45 aimed at your head. He pulls the trigger, you fall down into the pit, and the truth is, the game was rigged from the start. Alex meets the same fate as her brother, and that's it. That's the end. Wake up, Alex. You've got to set yourself free. And upon further inspection, this is like the third or fourth time I've opened up a fifth chapter with wake up blank, you've got to set yourself free. Just a neat little essay note there. Anyhow, this being said, Alex wakes up in a nightmare conversation with her old therapist, Dr. Lynn. She tells you, quote, "I suppose I'm proud of you for trying. You helped some people, chased a mystery, got to kiss a sweet boy. But Alex, you're right back where you started. Only for our retort to fall on deaf ears because she's not real. There's a therapy office puzzle with a guitar case. Solve it, leave the office, and we're snapping back to reality in the mines. We're further down the mine shaft, caught on a platform that was high up enough that it didn't kill us, which is That's nice. There's a rusty old ladder in front of us, we go to climb it, and we fall further down into the depths and into another nightmare. Come one, come all to this tragic fair. We're in the hospital now, and hey look, it's Gaben! We're not here to see him though, and as he tells you, quote, play your part. So enter the room and find Mom, who is dying of, I think, cancer? I'm not 100% sure, but it doesn't matter. You go to try talking to Mom, only for it to flash cut to the talk being over and you're back talking with Gabe outside. He'll tell you that you missed something, and that you have to remember harder. Enter the room again and get the full conversation and watch as Mom dies. The camera fades to white, and we see a blue aura forming. The trauma train keeps sweeping gently forward to the night Dad and Gaben had their last fight. For context, following the death of Mom, Dad's employment situations got more unstable, and he's gotten more and more angry with Gabe's rebellious behavior, which leads to a lot of infighting. And for Alex, she's trying so hard to keep the peace. It's an exhausting job of giving up everything just to try and help ends meet, and one night this situation meets the breaking point. Long story short, Dad and Gaben get into a fight, Alex tries to stop them, and she gets a punch in the face from Dad that was meant for Gabe. Dad realizes what he's done and leaves. He just disappears, never to be seen by his kids again. And after a while, CPS comes and takes you away. Eventually, Gabe is sent to juvie, and you're now been split apart for the next 8 years. While you're still in this nightmare, remember to play your part and watch as you relive a lot of the trauma you endured in the foster care system. From abusive staff, to child suicides, to constantly being sent back by families that didn't want you, it all weighs down on Alex. And with a scream and a power burst, you're alone in the void, broken and defeated. Then good old Gaben comes in and tells you that life may be hard and the world may suck, but none of this matters because the only person who can tell you what you're worth is you. In your heart you can't contain it, and the anthem won't explain it, so Alex gets up and is finally ready to carry on and fight back. Start to limp your way through the mines when the lantern you had managed to light goes out and you're back to the eternal darkness. Focus up and keep fighting. Nothing can stop you now, not even the darkness. And for your efforts, you see a faint red glow in the distance thanks to your powers. Alex approaches ever so slowly to find that it's a locket buried amongst the rubble, and there 2 photos are in there. One of a young boy, and the other of a much younger girl. Or, more accurately, one of Gabe and one of you. This is where Dad went, off to the mines, and died in the same accident that made Jed a hero. And using your powers in Dad's last moments, you discover that if Jed had actually listened to his crew that day, they'd all have gotten out alive. So him being a hero is a fraudulent claim. With evidence and newfound purpose, Alex begins the long and tedious ascent to the surface. Resurfacing, you're at the same abandoned processing plant / mining facility from the end of episode 1, and you make the long journey back to town. In town today, there's a meeting about the future of Haven Springs and this particular project Typhon is looking to expand on, and all seems to be going in their favor, when suddenly, Alex enters the room and is ready to throw down. Everyone is concerned because you're bleeding profusely and your leg is definitely shattered, but you've got other things to do, like take this company down, get Jed sent to prison, and then we'll worry about that stuff. Now you're essentially in a courtroom drama, with the other people in the bar being the jury that you have to convince. And if you played the game right, you'll get the support of everyone. Even Ryan is right there by your side to fight against the crimes his dad committed. I mean, do you know how bad you have to have fucked up for your own kid to turn against you in an instant? Because up till this point, he has always loved you unconditionally, always looked up to you as a hero, and now he sees you as a monster. I mean, good lord, man, that's brutal. Anyways, it's time to directly confront Jed by just kind of freezing everyone. Don't know why that happens. I think it's just kind of a cool visual thing. And you go all Psychonauts emotional clairvoyance on his ass, just ripping into him until you get to make the final choice, to condemn him or to forgive. And in all honesty, the more crushing option is to forgive him. And you watch as he just crumbles as the police take his ass far away. Days have gone by, Alex's medical issues have since been addressed and covered, and we're up in the apartment dealing with the aftermath of everything. News reports, Typhon tanking as a company, an endless stream of reporters trying to get interviews. It's a lot of shit you don't want to deal with. Then there's a knock at the door. Who could it be now? Another reporter that doesn't know their boundaries? Nope. It's actually something good, like my boy Ryan. The 2 hug and he's got a brief little speech to give about how wherever you choose to go, whatever you may choose to do. Whenever that may be, he'll be there if you'll have him. And it's so sweet and adorable, and God, I love this character so much. Anyways, he just wanted that to be known, along with the usual he's here if you need anything, and he leaves to give you your space. Alex goes up to the rooftop to just sit and reflect in a more quiet environment, and up here, she has a conversation with the ghost of Gaben. You've come to him for guidance, because you never really imagined what the future could possibly be like, and Gabe seemed like he had it all figured out, so let's see what he has to say. The following is word for word what he says, because I love this speech, and it says it a lot better than I could. He says, "It's 3 hours from now. A bus pulls away. You're not on it. Ryan approves. Life goes on. You go back to work. You settle into a routine. One day, with almost no warning, Steph up and bolts town. It hurts. But she does offer you a going-away present, her job. You take it. All of those years of being a music snob finally pay off. And little by little, time does its thing. The apartment starts to feel less like a museum and more like a home. Thoughts of Jed, of Typhon, even me, begin to fade into the background. The rooftop is your stage. You perform every week to a small but adoring group of fans. Maybe, while you play, you wonder what could have been. Performing for more people in more cities. Sharing your music with the world. Or maybe you never think about that much at all. You don't know exactly when it happens, but one day, you look around and find that you have transformed this place as much as it has transformed you. And the most extraordinary thing of all is just how normal it feels. You don't question it. You don't doubt it or wonder what might have been. It's your life. The life you fought so hard to have. And for the first time in a long time, you just live. And now, you get to make your final choice. Do you stay, or do you go off into the great wide open? And you know what? This choice was pretty easy. I chose to stay. Welcome home. Now that we've gotten through the story, let's discuss the players, performers, and portrayers that are each another's audience outside the Gilded Cage. Let's start with the ones I have the least to say about, then work our way up towards the big characters I have a lot to say about. Yeah. So, kicking this off is going to be Ethan, or Step Boy. See, he's an interesting character for the series because he's one of the few child characters in the series, and somehow doesn't fall into the same issues as his predecessors. Ethan wasn't an annoying shithead like Danny Boy in LIS2, which could be attributed to a combination of him being on screen for much less time, and being written into the narrative to fill a specific role. I like the segment of gameplay he gets, because I do really like the LARP section in Chapter 3. It's a lot of fun, but that's mostly because of the other character stuff with other characters, and it's just a really unique section of gameplay for the series, you know? Also, I'm gonna go ahead and lump Charlotte here too. I think the older small-town artist is an interesting character type, and of course she's used to explore a different angle of grief, and that's all fine and dandy, but I kinda don't care. I've seen this 1,000 times. Like, I made a joke about the crow in Chapter 3 or 2, or whichever one, while talking about Charlotte, and the problem is that James O'Barr perfected this character way back in 1989. Like, you can't make a character that explores the grief of losing a partner in a tragic accident better than Eric Draven, but that's a topic for another day, and I mean that this time. I'll cover the crow one day, maybe even a day sooner than you'd think. I don't know. We'll see how it is. Anyhows, another set of characters I want to mention is Eleanor and Riley. Eleanor is weird to me, and it's because I'm split on this character. On one hand, she's doing something incredibly stupid throughout the game, which is hiding her advancing dementia from Riley so she'll go off to college and all that shit. I get it, you know, you want your grandkid to go off into the world and not worry about you. I understand. But putting the sheer amount of faith she does into Alex keeping this secret for her is beyond stupid. I understand you want this under lock and key, but you really need to be upfront with these kind of things, man. But again, not my place, right? On the subject of Riley, I think she's alright. Like, I get it. It wasn't that long ago that I was in the same position of applying for colleges like she is. That said, for a supporting character who doesn't have too awful much to do in the foreground, she's alright, and again, a solid supporting character overall. So, Jed, huh? Yeah, I've commented on the shared constant of the evil father figure in this series, but I think Jed is maybe the best version of it. Genuinely, like, his twist is pretty interesting, and as a twist, I think it works. He starts as a good person, and the fact that he's as supportive as he is throughout the game is a great touch. He's still a company man at heart, though, and he's really only becomes evil when his secret about the kind of action you can't undo is threatened, and God, it's fantastic. He really didn't want to do it, but man, he does it because this is all he has. This, the bar, and Ryan, that's it. Till it all comes tumbling down. He's maybe the best villain in the series, at least from a writing perspective, but I couldn't tell you. To enter the final four, we've got one last one before the core three, and it's Gaben. Of course it's Gaben. I mean, he's such an interesting character. Like how you barely get to meet him before he's gone.
I miss you.
And the thing is, he only gets more interesting after he's gone. Because this game does the thing that I said before the storm should have done, which is environmental storytelling. See, we barely got to know Gabe, same as Alex. And so when she discovers something new about him, whether it be through the anecdotes people tell you or through the objects he left behind, you start to build this fascinating idea of what he was like. It makes his final monologue at the end of the game so much more interesting, because while it may just realistically be Alex telling herself everything she needs to hear, it also feels like something he would have said. It feels natural, even if it's just an imaginary conversation. And more than that, it feels earned. Unlike the William delusions Chloe has in Before the Storm, this felt like a moment the narrative earned, and it really is something so special. I think Gabe is really one of the best characters here, which is really funny to say considering how little he's actually here. Now on to the core three characters in this narrative, starting with my least favorite by default, Steph. Contrary to the language I tend to use when talking about this character, I don't hate her, but I don't particularly love her either. Consequential lesbian was always going to be in a rough spot for me because I already knew her from Before the Storm, and that's a terrible place to meet a character that I should like, which I have to say unfortunately taints my perception of the character here. I will grant them this. They made her an actual character here, and that's really a great thing. They gave her a purpose in the overarching narrative, and she felt more involved as a whole in the end. It gave her a much needed glow up of sorts, and really just turned her into a real character overall. Not an easy task, but they did it well. I like that she's carved her own place in this town and feels a lot more involved in this community, which again works to counteract the damage done when she was introduced and had nothing to do. They made her consequential, and that's really all I could have asked from this character. I still don't love her as much as everyone else does, but that's truly because she was dealt a losing hand from the start against an opponent who was given a royal flush. Speaking of, it's time for the boy himself, Ryan. Look, he had every possible advantage going into this game the first time around, and I'm gonna be honest, he still holds every advantage. They hit a home run out of the park here, and I feel like I don't need to explain too much past that, but I'm going to anyway. So Ryan had the role of being Gaben's best friend, and the chemistry these two have is fantastic. Sure, they give each other a lot of shit, but it comes from a place of love, and I think it's great. Ryan being the first person Alex encounters to remember such pure joy is a lot of fun, and I really like it because the memory of that prank is still really fun to me. I also like that the parts of him we learn about through backstory and environmental stuff is really well done, like him promising to become a park ranger because his mom always encouraged him to do what he loves, and the memory of his 21st birthday that you examine through a photo are really great details that expand the world so much without doing too much. That academic and storytelling shit aside, I do just think he's a great character as a whole. Like, his personality is really great, he's a lot of fun to be around, and you know what? He has issues of his own, and it adds a bit of complexity to his character. But above all else, he's just a great guy. And most of my love for this character is purely vibes-based. There's just something about him that speaks to me on a personal level, like the Mountain Man Park Ranger nature dork character type speaks to me, and I'm not sure I can explain what specifically it is about that kind of character that makes me like him so much, but whatever, right? It does help that he gets the best scene of any scene in the whole series, and he has a lot to do in the narrative, but I think you already knew that. I mean, he's an integral part of this place. He does a lot. Like, he made the sword that Ethan gets during the LARP sequence, and that's cool as shit, man. I'm sure I'll talk more about him later, but this is a problem for a later segment, as I'm sure you've gathered is the case by now. And then there was Alex. If I wasn't so biased towards Max being my favorite, Alex may have been my favorite protagonist in the series on pretty much every level. She's got a great arc, she's got a fun personality, and watching her grow as the game goes on, watching her gain confidence and finally feeling like she's found a place to belong, is so charming and incredibly well executed across the board. Of course, she gets a lot of fun interactions, and it all feels like she's her own character, while still allowing the player to insert themselves into the story like the other non-Chloe protagonists in the series. Alex is just a really engaging character. From the voice actress's performance, to the singing, to just all of her personality and how she grows from incredibly awkward and out of place to truly belonging. She's fantastic. I mean, I'm contractually obligated to dock points for her singing Creep, so I sure will. And speaking of Creep, let's talk about the music, yeah? So, this game's soundtrack follows in the steps of Life is Strange 2, which is to say that we're going more mainstream, but more so and specifically, we're gonna cover big songs. And there's also a lot of songs, like way more than I think I've ever noticed, and I've played this game like 1,000 times. I mean, when I was searching for some of the OST songs in the game for my video background audio, I discovered that I forgot about just all of the other music in the game. I suppose I did forget about the jukebox, but that doesn't matter, so let's get to the point. The music in this game is great, and this goes for the original music and the licensed music. But the licensed music is what we're here to talk about, because it's more interesting to me. The first song to mention is in fact Creep. I hate Radiohead. I think that's become abundantly clear during the plethora of times I've talked about this game, or the amount of times I've referenced this song as a bit. I understand why it's here, and unlike on Melancholy Hill in LIS2, it works. Alex singing this shit fits so well to the moment it's played in. The whole being out of place, not belonging here or anywhere, has been a big theme in Alex's life, and is a big, major, central theme in the game. At least, actually, not at least early on, it's like the whole game. Of course, Alex finds her stride and her place in the world as it goes on, but that's how the game goes, you know? Another big step in the soundtrack would be the jukebox, which allowed them to add so much music that I completely forgot about. And I'll admit, the indie vibes of the jukebox do feel a little out of place in the context of a small mining town bar, but what do I know? Alabaster Daydreams is the standout track in the jukebox. It can be played in episode 2 during episode 3, where it's Alex working the bar, doing her job before you go to steal the flash drive. And, you do it to help out a student who's failing to remember a song, and I get it. She doesn't have this encyclopedic knowledge of all the songs she likes like I do, because I'm that brain damaged. It's a great song, and the context of Gabe having used it to mess with Jed a long while ago really helps the world feel more lived in. It's also just kind of a good song, but not the most important thing about it. A large step in the soundtrack, and the series as a whole, is definitely the usage of Blister in the Sun. I mean, that song was huge, and the mass appeal and staying power this song has had is astonishing. Everyone knows this because it's a classic radio hit, but I'm mostly here because of what is perhaps the ultimate dad movie, Grosse Pointe Blank, which is a very fun movie, and I recommend it if you've never seen it. And this song was used to great effect in that. And here, yeah, it's used to great effect in the very fun sequence of Episode 4's Spring Festival concert. It's got the appropriate vibe, it's fun, and I think there's something mildly poetic about a queer female character singing a song by a band called Violent Femmes, which ironically was a band consisting of men, and also it's just a good scene in the game. And there's 2 more songs I want to mention by name, and I don't have too much to say about either of them as a whole. So, during part of the Episode 5 Nightmare sequence, specifically when you're back home again, you listen to one of your very few records, and it's a song that the first time I played the game debated me, because I was expecting a much different song. which was the song that this was sampled for, and it's a much smaller song you've probably never heard of, that song being Stan by Eminem. Yeah, you know, real underground independent shit, right? You've never heard of that. Now, sorry, I can't say that with a straight face. Now, the actual song that plays here is in the original format of Thank You by, I'm gonna say Ditto, D-I-D-O. I don't know if it's Ditto or Dido. She's British, so I'm gonna go with Ditto. The problem is, I kept expecting it to be Stan because I'm from the Midwest and have severe brain damage. This is very much a vibes-based choice for Alex, and it feels unnecessary to have this moment at all, but it fits the vibe, and they had the budget to use it, so they used it appropriately, and, you know, good for them. And last up is maybe my favorite song in the whole game. It's Take Me Home. And no, it has nothing to do with Country Roads, John. The song is by a band called Julia and Angus Stone, and they did a fair bit of music for this game, like the menu music that has multiple versions that appear throughout the game, but that's not the point. This is the ending music, and it fits the staying here ending so well that it's astonishing. I mean, it's such a good way to end this narrative that's been all about home, finding where you belong, and all that good thematic stuff that I haven't really discussed yet. I'm gonna say this, it's times like these that make me wish I was allowed to play a lot of the music I talk about without getting smited by the divine powers of douchebags that abuse the copyright system, because it's hard to convey the feeling of this song without playing it. Go check it out for yourself, but, you know, I suppose that's the nature of the beast, but whatever. Let's go home. On the subject of home, let's talk about that theme, yeah? So every game in this series has their own set of themes, and I think this one might be the best execution of telling a story about its respective theme. The game, before the events of the game, very heavily relies on Alex having been in and out of the foster care system in a never-ending cycle of finding a home, then getting returned because the foster family couldn't deal with the unique challenges her powers presented them with. She's been in a never-ending cycle where she's never felt like she's belonged. It sets up what her character arc is going to be for later on, right? We start the game and she's leaving for what she hopes is going to be her final home, an escape from the agony of the foster and group homes she's always known. For her, Gabe finally finding her is a lifeline, and then she gets to Haven Springs. She gets to town and Gabe gives her a place to stay, a place that is essentially hers and hers alone. It feels like a more permanent location, a place to call home. And then that sense of home is shattered when Gabe literally gets his shit rocked. It really only felt like home because of family, so remove family from the equation, and then what? The rest of the game is then Alex building a sense of belonging in the community, both on-screen and in actions that occur in the gaps between episodes. We start to feel like this previously unfamiliar place is becoming more like home, more lived in, and more like we belong here. Alex becomes a part of the town as much as the town becomes a part of her. Then, of course, there's Ryan's big speech about how if she wants to settle into this town, the town will always make room for her, which comes as a shock because Alex never considered the possibility. Her whole life has been spent not belonging anywhere, and now she's presented with a place that really feels really accepting, like she's in the right place. Then when you play the game right and have everyone on your side, it becomes abundantly clear that you've found a home where the people are there for you because they care. But most interesting of all is Gaben's speech. The whole ending of it is phenomenal, but it really encapsulates that Alex can stop running now, that this place won't abandon her, that she's finally home. The scale of the narrative is perhaps the most interesting when it comes to this theme. Like, a lot of narratives about finding home have this grand scale or this role in a much larger event in history, like Persepolis, which is essentially about similar themes of growing up in places you don't feel like you belong in and the lifelong search for a place that's truly home as a result. But it's situated in the context of the Iranian Revolution and immigrant experience, thus it becomes about a lot more. But this game's core message is about finding home, about finding a place to belong, and while there are other themes, like generational trauma, as explored in a lot of media featuring Asian American protagonists around the time this game released, and grief, those themes aren't the focal point. It's about finding a place where you truly feel safe. feel like you belong. And it's all done in a pretty small scale. It's about this one girl in this one town. This is Alex's journey of finding home, not anyone else's, which really helps focus the narrative, and the game does a really good job of exploring this as a result. The individualization of it oddly helps make it more accessible, but I might be getting out of my depth here, so I'm going to stop while I'm ahead. More to what I can discuss, this is a really unique topic for a game in this series to talk about, and it does it really well. In terms of being a good exploration of its central theme, this may be the best one in the series for that. The original game's fate versus free will theme is well explored, but I mean, it's a little clunky at times. It's well executed as a whole, though. Life is Strange 2 missed the mark of what should have been its central theme of brotherhood and fatherhood, but it had some steps that tried to explore that theme, and Before the Storm did nothing right and barely explored a theme, let alone what should have been a central theme that tied the whole narrative together. Regardless, True Colors explored its central theme well, and that's all I could ask from it. So suffice to say, this game did a lot more than I asked from it. I would like to close this segment out with a quote. Home is where I want to be. Pick me up and turn me around. I feel numb, born with a weak heart. I guess I must be having fun. David Byrne. Now you may ask yourself, what the hell is this guy talking about? And I would tell you that I honestly have no clue. I just really needed to make a Talking Heads reference for the segue into the next section, or I may not have. I mean, this could be the place, or it could not be. Who knows? Maybe it's even the City of Dreams. The settings of the franchise are about as important as the music, in all abject honesty. The locations help establish an identity, like moving the original game out of this quiet coastal town on the west coast would lose a lot of the intrigue it has. I mean, if you put this shit in Massive 2 shits, it would be a very different game. But the sleepy little town of Arcadia Bay works great. It lets it keep its more Twin Peaks-esque locale, and thus it feels more unique and contained. Part of LIS2's identity crisis is that each location only feels like a temporary stop, and locations can change so fast that I lose my sense of place. Everything feels like an airport, a place you just travel through to get somewhere else. And like a lot of airports, it's not a place you ever remember unless it's bad, like ATL International, because that place is hell on earth. LIS2 has no set identity. The location always changes, the people always change, nothing is worth remembering. Even the journal entries that are there to help explain what happened during the time jumps are just boring little 2 to 3 sentence paragraphs that tell us about pretty much nothing important. It feels like it lacks a central identity other than the identity of a runaway, and it kinda hurts. But this game? Haven Springs is truly the most normal location in the series. It's an idyllic little mining town in a tight-knit community that feels cohesive and like a real place. This is a whole lot more important than you'd expect for this narrative. I mean, excluding the obvious reasons like it had to be a mining town for the mining blast to make sense as a plot thing, I meant for everything else. Like, finding home wouldn't have felt as satisfying if this game was in a different location than Colorado. Colorado was the perfect choice because while you could have put this game in a more Red Hill mining town-like place in West Virginia and not have to change much, I don't think it would have felt as good, you know? Colorado has the mountains that make for a really pretty location and help give such a distinct feel to the game. I mean, I'm not sure you could have gone any further in any direction and had the same effect. Like, if this game was in Montana, it would not have hit the same. The point is, location is very important to a narrative and a piece of media's identity. Whether intentional or not, the settings influence every other aspect of the thing. Like True Stories, director David Byrne, 1986, wouldn't have been as effective if it wasn't set in the fictional town of Virgil, Texas. Sure, it could have been set in any part of Middle America, but I don't think it would have hit as hard anywhere else. The mix of cultures and eccentric weirdos that make up the fictional town of Virgil helped make a location that could have really been anywhere, and yet is so distinctly Texas and Middle America. It's such a fascinating concept to me, and I think this game, like True Stories, truly makes great use of its setting to carve out a unique identity for itself. The tonal differences between the games can best be explained through music genres, and strangely it coincides with the soundtracks of the games, among other things. If you've paid attention to this series, and this game especially, you'll know how important the music is to the tone of the game. I mean, I talked about the music extensively here and in every other essay I do, but let's get to the point. Each game in this series can be assigned a genre that best describes it, and I'm gonna dole out the genres and then break it down and explain them in release order. The original game is indie alternative. Before the Storm is theoretically pop-punk. LIS2 is this weird blend of alternative, electronic, and alt-country. And finally, True Colors is pop. The original has a distinctly indie feeling. It's very small scale and locale, story, style, and soundtrack. From the first song you hear as Max walks down the hall, to the final song that plays when you let Chloe rot in hell where she belongs, none of it is huge and bombastic in scale or popularity. The game is very small, and it feels like an indie alternative album. Think more in line with the game's soundtrack, with your early 2000s, 2010s Alt-J, Sid Meier's, Foals, or more in line tonally with The Cure circa Disintegration. Now, I know The Cure isn't exactly indie, but they're kind of the gold standard of alternative music, so I'm contractually obligated to mention it. And, you know, Disintegration is one of my top 5 favorite albums ever made, so any chance I can talk about it, I will. Anyway, the point is, the first game in the series feels very small, very intentional, very much like it was exactly what it wanted to be without any studio intervention. An uncompromised vision. It's the kind of thing only a small team could make happen before they got famous, and then had to become more brand safe. In this regard, you could say that the first game is the riskiest one in the series because they had the most to lose on it, and yet they went for it. Before the Storm, in theory, is pop-punk. And I have to specify in theory, because in practice, this is about as punk as NSYNC. If you refer to the game, it's very easy to see that they wanted to be Green Day's American Idiot so badly, and yet they fumbled it every step of the way. Chloe is clearly a Jesus of Suburbia type. She's a rebel without a cause, and the problem is she's not a compelling enough character in her drive to rebel against the system. More to the point, the game should have had this kind of angsty, angry with the world tone, in a similar vein to Saint Jimmy by Green Day or Dance Dance by Fall Out Boy, or insert Blink-182 song here, but it falls flat in achieving its target aesthetic by a lot. They sure tried, however, they forgot that, like a good song in this style, it has to be fun to a degree. I mean, American Idiot is a song that has a very fun upbeat tempo and sound that gets you excited for the rest of the album. But the song goes hard on its own. This game fails at that. It's not fun. It's trying to be angsty and even a bit edgy, but it's about as edgy as NSYNC, or perchance the Backstreet Boys. All of this is to say that this game is a wannabe punk, a lot like its protagonist. LIS2 is an enigma, and I classify it as this weird blend of electronic, alternative, and alt-country because this one game is the strangest. It's a melting pot of all of these genres, and as each scene goes on, it gets less and less cohesive. This is the game where in the same episode it drops On Melancholy Hill, then DANCE, and I Found a Way, which covers so many genres in so little time. It's a reflection of that game's setting and characters in a way. I mean, the cast of weirdos in this game is as varied as they come, so it does make sense. I'm gonna say that while this incohesion makes sense, it kind of hurts its identity because it doesn't make it stand out in a good way, more of a train wreck way. Like if Will Smith tried to make Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness, or if Nickelback tried to make Wish. It just doesn't make sense. It's an interesting idea, but a confusing identity crisis in practice. That said, the music genres do correlate to this game's identity and tonal whiplashes, so it's not a total failure all in all. And then there's True Colors. This game marks a pretty big shift tonally and sonically for the series. The songs in this game, as I've mentioned by now, are more big budget and pop than any other game in the series. Similarly, this game feels bigger than the other ones in a neat way, in terms of the game's scale and scope. It covers a lot of ground really well in a fairly short runtime, and that's wonderful. But as good as this is, it feels like something else was lost along the way. We sacrificed some of the indie feeling for this bigger scope feel. It's kind of like the difference between Pink Flamingos and Hairspray. They're both John Waters movies and feel like it, but one is a lot safer feeling. Nothing wrong with safer, it just loses a bit of the charm, you know? Long gone are the days of indie rock, and now we're here with Radiohead and violent femmes. Nothing wrong with that. Okay, but like a lot wrong with the Radiohead, but a different argument for a different day, right? But it's not the same feeling, and I miss that a lot. I miss that smallness, that self-contained, uncompromised vision where the indie music was out of necessity. It's that kind of scrappy nature that's impossible to recapture once you've gone as big as this series has, and honestly, that's just the nature of the beast. It scares me, the thought of losing this nature in what I make and how I make it. It scares the shit out of me. But that's a thought for much farther down the line. So for now, let's enjoy the ride as it goes along. Yeah? In a final segment before closing down the bar for the night, I'm prepared to make an argument that I've thought about for a while now and am finally there enough mentally and emotionally to explain why Life is Strange True Colors is the objective best game in the series. Now that might sound crazy, given that my favorite game is the original and my favorite protagonist in the series is Max, but hear me out. You're gonna have to bear with me. The setting is maybe the prettiest it's ever been, and this game is visually stunning. I adore every moment in this world because it should be adored. It's such a lovely location, and even though I might personally prefer the more dated and almost painted-esque style of the original game's first release, not the remaster, this one is definitely the best to look at. But graphics aren't everything, so let's see what else this game has up its sleeves. As a whole, there is not a wasted moment in this game. Everything feels like it has a point, and the small choices have consequences and meaning. If you don't go out of your way to really get involved in the world of the game, you're not going to get everyone to support you during the town council meeting. You won't have established yourself as a part of this community, at least not nearly as meaningfully. It's fantastic, and it's really the only game in the series where every choice and interaction felt meaningful towards the overall plot. This is the one game, the only game, barring the first one because time travel complicates the matter a lot, where everything felt like it impacted the whole, and that's really hard to pull off, yet this game did it effortlessly. The music is another high point here. While I do miss the days where the soundtracks were more mid-budget indie songs, I do appreciate all of the music this game has. And the fact that the ending song was purely original for this game is awesome. The music helps accent certain moments so well, and when Alex sings, it feels purposeful for the narrative. As much as I like to rag on the game for using creep, it works brilliantly in the moment and helps externalize the internal conflicts Alex has. It's such a masterclass in this regard, because even though we have access to her internal monologue, helping get this out in a way that makes sense for the character is a genius move. Don't get me wrong, I love Max's internal monologue and voiceover because that's the way I work, but it's not the most interesting way for a visual medium to convey these thoughts. The music usage, though? Brilliant, stunning, no notes. The characters here are all pretty well utilized, and overall it has a higher batting average than the other games when it comes to that. In a lot of the other games, characters can just kinda drop from the narrative and never matter much after they've served their purpose. But here, pretty much everyone has their moments in every episode. Sure, Mac does essentially disappear after having served his purpose, but he's really the one outlier. Eleanor, Ducky, Riley, Charlotte sometimes, Ethan, Jed, every side character has their role, and every main character is likable and has a part to play. There's not a wasted character slot here, and that's kind of a miracle. The original game has some issues with not fully utilizing everyone there, like Warren and Kate deserve more screen time than they get, and Kate especially deserved to not get dropped from the narrative as hard as she does after her attempt. Characters just disappear in LIS too, which makes sense given the vagabond nature of the game, but doesn't make the most interesting narrative when you're following the same two characters, especially when only one of them is interesting. And of course, there's Alex. If Max didn't mean what she means to me personally, Alex would easily be my favorite protagonist here. Not my favorite character overall, because without Max it's a toss-up between Ryan and Warren, depending on how I'm feeling. But she's a top 4 Life is Strange character for sure. They managed to make a character that's shockingly empathetic the whole way through, because empathy is one of the hardest emotions for a game to convey. I don't fully understand empathy, and I never have for whatever reason. Like, it's not something that's ever clicked for me. But I feel a lot when it comes to this character. I can point to exact motivations and reasons for what she's feeling and parse out the more subtextual things that are going on, and that's a really hard thing to do as a writer. But who cares about that shit? It's all about, is she a fun character to be around, and do I care about her narrative? And yeah, I do. From an objective point of view, Alex is given more to do and has more of a plot than Max did, and it worked phenomenally. She's a lot of fun to be around, from her personality to the little quirks she has. She's a great character, and maybe even the best character, and maybe even the objective best protagonist the series has ever produced. But of course, it wouldn't be in a Leg of Glazed Ham essay if I didn't talk about the boy. Ryan is genuinely the best of the best boys in the series, and while Warren holds a very special place in my heart, Ryan is just that good. He's got some of my favorite scenes in the whole series, and I don't think I need to remind you of how good his kiss the girl moment is. I mean, it's so good, and everything about it is perfectly executed. He's got a lot to do in the narrative, and he's got a lot of personality that many of the other side characters and romanceable NPCs don't. He feels like a fully realized vision with his own myriad of issues and quirks that definitely hit home for me. More than any of that though, this is maybe the game I'm always most excited for when I replay all of the games, because I love just getting lost in this world with these characters in this specific narrative. It's such a good, complete package, and I don't know how anyone could say it's not the best one. I mean, it's definitely the shortest game in the series, and this is definitely going to be my shortest video in the series, and I never get tired of it. It's so good. No matter how many times I replay it, I just love this game more and more every time. With everything in mind, I hope I've made enough of a case for why this is the best game in the series. Every aspect of it is perfect, from top to bottom. It's just that good. It's so beautifully constructed, and I have no qualms about saying that. It's the objective best game in the series. It's got great characters, a great protagonist, a great soundtrack, a great location, and it's got a lot of heart, and it has some of the greatest scenes the series has ever produced. With all of that said, let's get to the conclusion and end out this essay. Yeah. With that, I've once again covered every currently available game in the series. Assuming you're seeing this when it's released, it won't be too long before Double Exposure is out. And don't you worry, I'll be covering that game as soon as I can. I will be as in-depth as I can be, as I'm sure you'll expect, and I've got some interesting things to talk about there. But that's actually for another day. Let's get back on track with True Colors. This game is so good, and I can't state that enough. Every aspect is so well done, and honestly, I think I'm comfortable with giving it a solid 9 out of 10, same as the original game. I usually tend to dock a point as a joke because of creep, but I don't think it's necessary. I think this is objectively the best game in the series, and probably has earned that 9 out of 10 more than the original did. Which you cannot understand is a really hard thing for me to say. I can't possibly understate how much of a miracle this game is, because I originally wasn't even interested in playing it. Then I got the chance to, and well, look at me now. I think it's an incredible game, and it's absolutely worth playing for yourself, even more so than a lot of the games I tend to talk about on this show. But hey, form your own opinion and feel free to tell me why I'm wrong in the comments, or more appropriately, why I'm right. Anyhows, my name is A Leg of Glazed Ham, and thank you so much for reading this essay, and an even truer thank you for if you've watched the other parts in the series. It means so much more than you could ever know. I would also like to say I'm sorry if this one's a little shorter than the usual one. I would have liked to talk a little more about it, but as I'm making this, I'm on a little bit of a time crunch. I hope you understand. Maybe when the original version of this essay comes out, it'll be a bit longer, but again, different problem, different day. Anyways, thanks again, and good night.